It's the new gold rush. The digital currency Bitcoin has been making headlines this week after its huge increase in value. But now ministers are to introduce tighter regulations on the virtual currency because of concerns it's being used to launder money and dodge tax. Some MPs believe the government should help bring digital currencies into the mainstream and say it could have advantages for our public services. Here's Emma Vardy.
Bitcoin is one of a number of so-called cryptocurrencies. Unlike the notes in your pocket, it largely exists online and isn't printed by governments or traditional banks.
You store Bitcoin in a digital wallet and it can be used to pay for all sorts of goods and services online. And some businesses accept payment in Bitcoin too, like this soup restaurant here in Old Street, which also has its own Bitcoin cash point.
There is an advantage, and that's lower transaction fees. If you compare the fees of accepting Bitcoin compared to credit card fees, which, especially if it's Amex, can be very high. It's quite nice being, the underdog against the banking system.
Until now, people have been able to buy and sell Bitcoin largely anonymously. So apart from just buying your lunch with it, police say it could be used on a much bigger scale for money laundering by criminals. Now the Treasury wants to regulate Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Regulators need to look at consumer protection, and I think that's probably one of the issues that we really need to address and take seriously. There's no protections actually in Bitcoin, so if you go to the bank, you've got a £70,000 buffer that they will guarantee for you. No such thing with Bitcoin. You are effectively your own bank.
At the moment, the new regulations, which are expected to come into force by early next year, will focus on giving authorities greater oversight of cryptocurrencies under anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism legislation. The identities of Bitcoin users will no longer remain anonymous. But some say the government should go much further.
We ought to be leading the way in how we can apply this for social good as well as for economic gain by encouraging Bitcoin and that side of the cryptocurrencies, in that side of this new technology wave, by regulating it properly and allowing it to expand. We're actually doing ourselves a big favour as a country.
John Mann, a member of the Treasury Select Committee, says he wants to see the government carry out a much fuller inquiry into the potential use of alternative currencies for public services, and believes the government should look at how they and the underlying technology called blockchain could be used in future by authorities.
I'd like to see all health records put on the blockchain so that if an ambulance turns up, they've got immediate access to my records. But also property transactions were a really good one to be carried out on there. It would actually help get rid of fraud. It needs that push from government, and that would allow this whole new technology wave to dramatically expand.
The value of a single Bitcoin has increased 12-fold this year, from around £700 in January to around £8,000. Part of its charm, some argue, was the fact it wasn't part of the mainstream. But now government regulation could pave the way for that to change.
Well, here to discuss this with me are Dominic Frisby, author of Bitcoin, The Future of Money, and Dr. Savas Savuri, Chief Economist at Tosca Fund Asset Management. Welcome to both of you. Dominic, so do you think we'll all be paying for our shopping and for meals out with Bitcoin in the future?
No, I don't. Bitcoin is another currency, and it was designed to be cash for the internet. And if you think about what we use cash for in the real world, we use it for small transactions, we use it for quick transactions, we use it for direct transactions, and we use it for private transactions. Now, there are all sorts of transactions, and the aim of Bitcoin was to replicate that for the internet. So I can send you money directly without involving a bank or any kind of middleman. And that was the original purpose of Bitcoin. And it wasn't to kind of replace the US dollar or anything else, or the British pound. So the idea that we'll use it and it will be the only money system in the world is fallacious. But the technology behind it, which is, by the way, as your show just showed, morphed into something much bigger than an alternative cash system. It's used for record keeping, all sorts of other things which we can talk about. The technology behind it is a breakthrough technology, and future money systems might actually be based on blockchain technology.
Why don't you think, Sav, that the future of commerce is with Bitcoin?
I don't describe it as a cryptocurrency, I call it a pseudo-currency. John Mann mentioned blockchain. You don't own blockchain by owning Bitcoin. if you look at the universe of those who've been buying Bitcoin of late, and the universe of those who think John McDowell would be a good chancellor, they overlap too closely. So I think they're sort of financially illiterate, many of the Bitcoin buyers.
Right. What do you mean exactly?
You can't deny the graph. You can't deny the exponential growth in the price of Bitcoin. But we mustn't confuse the price of something with its value. It's a bubble. I'm sure Dominic's book is a great work of fiction. A work of fact was written by Charles Mackay in 1841 called Extraordinary Popular Delusions. We've been here before. This will burst.
Right. I mean, you're a cynic, clearly. But I mean, is your book a book of fiction in the way it's just been described?
Well, that's rather a damning indictment from somebody that's never even read my book. And interestingly, you damn the technology. You've never used it. You've never bought a Bitcoin.
I've not
You've
been
never
to the North Pole, and it's
received a
cold.
Bitcoin.
Right.
And you find this with the Bitcoin doomsayers. It's always, inevitably, people who are not familiar with the technology.
Now, listen,
Are you familiar with the technology in order to say that it won't work?
He's never bought a Bitcoin.
I've been working in commercial finance for 30 years. I've got a PhD in econometrics. I'm a capitalist. I would hate to stand in the way of people making money, but I feel.
And people will have made money on Bitcoin, won't they?
There's sort of greater fool theory creeping in here, and again, let's not conflate owning Bitcoin with owning blockchain.
The problem is...
I think you can conflate the two. The greater fool theory argument, Bitcoin has been the greatest money-making opportunity any of us will ever see in our lifetimes. Now, who's the greater fool? The guy who's made money or the guy that stood aside?
What about the people that have lost? What about the people who have lost, though, money? Because they have, haven't they? I mean, it is extremely vulnerable and prone to illegal activity and to fraud.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And you're looking at somebody who has lost money in Bitcoin. I had some Bitcoin stolen off me way back
So
when.
why do you still believe in it, then?
Because the reason, as I originally said to you, it is cash for the internet. And the reason those Bitcoins were stolen from me was my own ignorance in security. Now, what you say about financially ignorant people currently speculating in Bitcoin, I would go along with that. It is a mania. There are people who are investing in Bitcoin at the moment who have got no experience whatsoever with it. But and anyone who does speculate in it should familiarise themselves with the technology first and be aware that by holding Bitcoins you are doing the internet equivalent of holding cash. Now, if you held cash, large amounts of cash, you would put it in a safe, you would put it in a bank, you would take some kind of precaution.
My 12-year-old son 2 or 3 years ago was trading with his friends picture cards, football picture cards. He got bored with it. And the current generation who are trading Bitcoin will get bored of it.
Will they if they keep making money, though?
No, because a lot of them are basically holding on to their positions thinking that, look, it's going up, it will go up again. No one's suggesting that there haven't been profits, but it's a zero sum. You make money because you flog it to the next person.
Right. If there was regulation, do you think it could work and be more than a fad as you see it? No, why not?
Because we do have enough currencies in the world. The fact that the Western currencies have no yield because of interest is zero, that will change. Normal service will be resumed shortly.
Right, and I don't see then how it could ever be a replacement even for cash or as another currency in that sense.
I'm not suggesting it is a replacement for other currencies. I'm saying it's cash for the internet. Or that was its original purpose, but it's morphed into something much bigger. The current system of money there are all sorts of faults with it. It's broken, and you said that the zero interest rate situation will fix itself. Well, we've been there for 8, 9, nearly 10 years, and there's very little sign of it changing. Yes, and this is a system of money that is backed by mathematical proof. It cannot be debased. It can't be quantitatively eased. You can't suppress interest rates. You can't print it. It can be stolen. Absolutely.
And it hasn't caught on in a massive way.
It's the base of ownership is so narrow. It's tulips.
Right. Just briefly, would you invest in it?
It's interesting that you said tulips, because in the 17th century, the Bitcoin of its day were Dutch tulip bulbs. People invested massively in them for a long time, and then suddenly the market went pop, and there was no interest in tulip bulbs.
But there was no underlying function in tulips.
Right.
They have no purpose. Bitcoin has a function.
You're not going to... Will the bubble burst?
As always, I take my lead from The Economist, and our view but actually I do, because people spend a lot of time working on it. Bitcoin, I wouldn't personally get involved in. I think you've got to get in, get out at the right time. I think it's too difficult. But I think blockchain and the underlying theory of cryptocurrencies and virtual currencies will be a development in our lifetime. So I think there is something underlying.
All right,
I'm not denying it's a main